Morning, everyone. Hope everyone's okay, and I'm hoping to see you at some point soon. Hopefully, for year 10 at some point before the summer. But for year 9 again, I'm not sure. So hopefully we'll see you at some point soon. Please, again, don't worry about these weeks that we've lost in terms of the history. We have got plenty of time to catch up, whether in year 9 or year 10, and to revise. So please don't worry. Okay, today we're going to look at another important individual called James Simpson, and his part in the development of anaesthetics. He had quite a big part, certainly in the UK, in developing anaesthetics. I suppose the first question is we need to understand what an anaesthetic is, which we'll do shortly. But if you just press pause on the video and spend a couple of minutes having a go at the science starter, just to recap where we are and make sure you understand what we've done in the previous couple of lessons. So if you pause the video for 2 or 3 minutes and just jot down your answers to these questions. Okay, brilliant. So, number one, you will have obviously done quite a bit of work around Louis Pasteur, and you'll understand that he was a French scientist who went on to develop the germ theory. Obviously, his rival, Robert Koch, the German scientist who was competing with Pasteur during the kind of 1860s, 70s to develop this germ theory, he went a step further and created specific vaccinations by dyeing those microbes so he could identify which microbe caused which disease. So he went a little bit further than Koch. Three, than Pasteur? What was spontaneous generation? Obviously, the opposite of the germ theory. It was the idea that not germs cause decay, but decay caused germs. Four, technology that helped both was obviously the high-powered resolution of the microscopes. So times 1,000 microscopes. For Koch, you could probably say the use of specific petri dishes, agar jelly, and staining and dye to stain would be points on around technology that you could use for him. Of factors that helped their discovery, well, obviously you could argue that individual genius is the most important, but this is where science and technology really begin to support discoveries with the development of the microscope. But not only that, with the development of science and as I said just then, the ability to dye microbes, the ability to have actually a kind of more 20th century looking laboratory to work in within teams and different teams of scientists. So that could be another factor in communication, could be a factor. War potential, because it was obviously creating competition between the two, so you could have that maybe as another factor here. Okay, so quick recap done. What I want to do today is just start by looking at this picture here. Okay, and I'd just be asking you really what you think is happening in the picture, or what has happened in the picture. It's quite an interesting picture, isn't it? So just pause your video and have a little look at that on your own before we discuss it. Okay, so the first thing that you obviously see there are 3 people in the picture. There's a person passed out here, another person passed out here, another guy who looks like he's just waking up from being passed out potentially. There are chairs knocked over, the papers on the floor, and something smashed there, a glass smashed there, some kind of skulls in the background, and maybe a link to scientists or a place of work for them. You will work out throughout the lesson actually why this picture is so significant and so famous when we're talking about the development of an anaesthetic, and in particular an anaesthetic called chloroform, which was the first anaesthetic. And we'll work out how this picture is actually of Simpson here in 1847 with a group of friends, and they are experimenting around the use of chloroform, and they're actually able to work out what it is. So we're going to have a look at other uses of pain relief first, but we just need to be clear on what an anaesthetic is. So this is called the chloroform party, which we'll go into right at the end of the lesson. And you'll understand why it's called the chloroform party once you've done a little bit of reading. Obviously, still, we've got two problems for doctors. And we're around the 1850s, 60s, exactly the same time as Pasteur and Koch were working, 50s to 70s. Simpson working a little bit earlier. But we've got two big problems. The first problem doctors still have is that of infection. And it's still a problem in the First World War, even in the early 1900s, that actually the patient dying from infection is at a higher rate than those that are being shot, or killed through actual warfare. So this is a big problem, and this is not a problem that Simpson works to fix. This is a problem that Lister works to fix, and we look at him next lesson, where he develops an antiseptic to actually prevent infection or limit it. Another problem we're going to look at today is the pain. And the pain that, for example, this patient is in here when this surgeon is having to operate on a wounded soldier. Okay? And you've seen images before from the work you've done on Pare of people having to chomp down on sticks whilst an operation is happening because there's no pain relief. And we've spoken before about women in childbirth as well and the amount of pain that they go through. And today we do have different forms of pain relief, from pethidine to epidurals to different types of pain relief. And it's the same with operations. If you've really got a difficult operation for a surgeon to do where he's got to manipulate some bones and put them back into place, then you may have something like morphine or ketamine, some kind of tranquilizer that actually allows them to operate without you screaming out in pain. So we've got all of this today. Even for a simple operation, you can use general and local anaesthetics if you're having a tooth taken out or whatever. You can localise the area that you want to prevent pain, or you can give someone a general anaesthetic too, which is probably a bit stronger. But that's a problem at this time. And Simpson's going to try and solve that problem. He's actually a professor of midwifery, and what that means is midwives look after ladies who have babies, and he works at Edinburgh in Scotland, and he's working off the back of this kind of idea that actually is going on in America at the time. And there are people in America, one called John Morton, who's doing a really good job to try and develop some pain relief. But what he used to use ether, which is obviously 100% alcohol. And you probably sometimes see on some films you watch, if people are pulling a bullet out of someone's skin, or if they're having to operate without any surgical materials nearby, or if the film's set in this time, that they would pour alcohol on the area to try and numb it, or they would give the patient some alcohol to try and numb that area. And ether was that kind of pain relief that they used, but they also did use different types of pain relief. Obviously alcohol, which is the first picture here, is one. They also used opiate, okay, and today we would probably recognise that as heroin, and as an illegal drug, part of that. They used easy to make laudanum, which was a staple drug, which they kind of prepared in gallons, which used some elements of alcohol. You could then use laughing gas as well, which were certain nitric oxides, and put that together to create pain relief. And then obviously they could use, as I said before, ether. So these are the kind of old-fashioned ways that they would try and give some pain relief to people when they were trying to operate on them. And actually, Simpson did use these, but he was specialising in childbirth, and he saw that this was needing something more to support pain during this period. And that's how he came about chloroform. He had this drive to try and make it easier for women during childbirth. And it was essentially a formula that looked like this. So ether, which we've touched on, and hydrochloric acid, which you might know a little bit about from science, put together to make chloroform. And that's the early stages of kind of how it was administered. They would probably wet a cloth with the mixture on and put it over the mouth before they had these kind of contraptions, before technology was advanced and they could do it like that. But that essentially was the formula. It was ether plus hydrochloric acid equals chloroform. What I've now done is I've put a handout on Show My Homework with more details around James Simpson, more details around his discovery of anaesthetics. So have a read of that. There are some questions that you can answer around that as well, about how he went about discovering it. And what I will do is I will just talk around the basics. But if you wanted to go into more detail, definitely have a read of it and have a go at the questions in the first box at least. No need, if you don't want to complete the flow diagram, but just have a look at the handout and read through it is probably the most important thing. Because obviously when chloroform is discovered, it's actually used straight away in childbirth. And he writes loads of articles to encourage other surgeons to use it. He actually argues, and quite rightly, that chloroform would allow surgeons to do longer, more complex operations, and he's spot on, because it would do. Even so, that in 1853, this is a good fact for you, chloroform was not accepted by everyone, because people, like they are with lots of things in medical developments, are reluctant to change. But Queen Victoria, the Queen of England, used it during childbirth, and she blessed the drug. She said it was unbelievable. So in 1853, she used chloroform during childbirth, and that was kind of the best claim to fame for Simpson, and a real rosing kind of endorsement of it by Queen Victoria. So I think that's it. The problem with it is it didn't reduce mortality rates, so it didn't reduce death rates, because longer operations would sometimes tend to lead to increased blood loss and deeper infection. So it was really difficult. The key thing is for doctors to know how much to give them and the accurate dosage, much like it was difficult when they were bleeding, hundreds of years earlier, to know how much blood to take when they believed in the four humours. Giving them the right dose of chloroform was tough. Okay, so you could pause this here and have a read of the sheets that I've put on Show My Homework alongside this, just to get a bit of a feel for it, and have a go at those questions about. They're just essentially questions around where Simpson's from, what he did, and the whole idea of this chloroform party, that it was actually discovered experimenting with friends by mistake, and it links back to that picture at the beginning. I thought this was quite two interesting pictures. One at the start, you can see this is around about 1850s, when they're beginning to use chloroform, wetting the towel or whatever with chloroform, or putting it over the patient's face to inhale it whilst the surgeon operates, and meaning that you don't need many people to hold the patient down, because there's less pain. You just potentially, at this time, without enough technology, need someone to hold down the cloth over the patient's mouth, and someone to actually perform the operation or the surgery. And then if you jump forward, this is the question around change over time, and how things in medicine progress. And these two pictures really do show it. I think you tend to get a question on this paper about differences between then and now. And you can see this patient here being given either morphine or general anaesthetic, and the technology available to doctors today, even to the extent of the tubes and the different types of needles and injections, and the ECGs, and the technology they can use, and how they can keep people on monitoring people's heart rate and blood flow and so on and so forth, and blood pressure. So there's so much in terms of difference between here and here, and I think that question tends to come up around not just anaesthetics but also antiseptics as well, which we'll look at next lesson. Okay, so you've had a little chance to to have a read of that sheet that I've put on Show My Homework, and also have a go at those questions. I'm not going to play this video now, but you can watch it if you just Google BBC bite size Simpson. The reason I'm not going to wait until next lesson, I think, before sharing it with you, and I'm going to bring in Lister and Simpson together. And then what I'd really like to do before we break up for half term is try a Microsoft Teams lesson. And I know that won't be everyone that can do that, so I'll certainly do a video as well. But I'd really like to. I've seen a couple of teachers try it, and I'd like to have a go at actually, going through this and you being able to ask questions whilst we go through it. So we'll try that next week as well to do something different. And like I said, you can watch this video if you want to. And now back to where we began. So actually, the discovery of chloroform, as we've been talking about, was in this country by Simpson. He discovered it as an effective anaesthetic. And anaesthetic means pain relief, don't forget, after experimenting with his friends here. And you can see in the picture that they are scientists because of how the room's set up with the smashed glasses on the floor where probably the chloroform was released from, and the schools in the background, so on and so forth. That's actually in Edinburgh where they discovered it, and that's actually in 1847 when it was discovered. Why is it important? Well, because it's a significant breakthrough, which allows the problem of pain to be solved for surgery. And it allows, as I said before, longer operations to go on and more complex operations to go on without hurting the patient. But obvious drawbacks from that are they don't know how much to give patients in terms of dosage. And if the operation is lasting longer, more blood could be lost, which could create deeper infection and potential loss of life. So mortality rates don't go down. But that's a really quick overview of Simpson. Because I've put that sheet on Show My Homework, I don't want to talk for longer today and keep the video any longer, because I prefer you just to sit and read that and have a go at the questions if you can do. Send me, upload the pictures of the work, keep uploading that. Big thing for me, like I said before, is going to be taking your books in, because you've all been pretty much working from your books and in your books, or taking in the packs of all the work you've done, and actually spending some good time this summer. Even if I don't see you before summer, I'm going to ask you to drop that off at some point in the next 2 months. If I don't see you, I hope I do, and I'm going to go through it all and mark it all and give you feedback, so we can start afresh when you come back in on new topics. But we're doing a good job. We're slowly working our way through the rest of medicine, and I 100% understand that we will have to go over this. I understand there'll be lots of issues that you've got with some of it, and you won't understand bits and bobs, and we will 100% be going over medicine at some point before you sit your final exams. Okay, guys, take care. Drop me any messages on my YouTube channel. Appreciate it if you comment. You don't have to like it or like it, just to give me a bit of feedback on how maybe it could be improved. I'm probably going to be in school on Friday, so I might do it from the electronic whiteboard on Friday, or I might try and prep for something around Teams next week, just to try and keep it engaging rather than you scrolling through PowerPoints on your own at home all the time. Okay, take care, guys. Stay in touch. I am reading everything that you send through on Show My Homework, even though I might not be responding every single time, but I'll keep doing that. Okay, cheers, bye.